Numbers 31 verses 1 to 54. War against Midian. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Avenge the Israelites on the Midianites. Afterward you shall be gathered to your people. So Moses said to the people, Arm some of your number for the war, so that they may go against Midian, to execute the Lord's vengeance on Midian. You shall send 1,000 from each of the tribes of Israel to the war. So out of the thousands of Israel, 1,000 from each tribe were conscripted, 12,000 armed for battle. Moses sent them to the war, 1,000 from each tribe, along with Phinehas son of Eleazar the priest, with the vessels of the sanctuary and the trumpets for sounding the alarm in his hand. They did battle against Midian, as the Lord had commanded Moses, and killed every male. They killed the kings of Midian, Evi, Rekam, Zur, Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian, in addition to others who were slain by them, and they also killed Balaam son of Beor with the sword. The Israelites took the women of Midian and their little ones captive, and they took all their cattle, their flocks, and all their goods as booty. All their towns where they had settled, and all their encampments, they burned, but they took all the spoil and all the booty, both people and animals. Then they brought the captives and the booty and the spoil to Moses, to Eleazar the priest, and to the congregation of the Israelites, at the camp on the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. Return from the war. Moses, Eleazar the priest, and all the leaders of the congregation went to meet them outside the camp. Moses became angry with the officers of the army, the commanders of thousands and the commanders of hundreds, who had come from service in the war. Moses said to them, Have you allowed all the women to live? These women here, on Balaam's advice, made the Israelites act treacherously against the Lord in the affair of Peor, so that the plague came among the congregation of the Lord. Now therefore, kill every male among the little ones, and kill every woman who has known a man by sleeping with him. But all the young girls who have not known a man by sleeping with him, keep alive for yourselves. Camp outside the camp 7 days. Whoever of you has killed any person or touched a corpse, purify yourselves and your captives on the 3rd and on the 7th day. You shall purify every garment, every article of skin, everything made of goat's hair, and every article of wood. Eleazar the priest said to the troops who had gone to battle, This is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded Moses. Gold, silver, bronze, iron, tin, and lead, everything that can withstand fire, shall be passed through fire, and it shall be clean. Nevertheless it shall also be purified with the water for purification, and whatever cannot withstand fire shall be passed through the water. You must wash your clothes on the 7th day, and you shall be clean. Afterward you may come into the camp. Disposition of captives and booty. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, You and Eleazar the priest and the heads of the ancestral houses of the congregation make an inventory of the booty captured, both human and animal. Divide the booty into 2 parts, between the warriors who went out to battle and all the congregation. From the share of the warriors who went out to battle, set aside as tribute for the Lord, 1 item out of every 500, whether persons, oxen, donkeys, sheep, or goats. Take it from their half and give it to Eleazar the priest as an offering to the Lord. But from the Israelites half you shall take 1 out of every 50, whether persons, oxen, donkeys, sheep, or goats, all the animals, and give them to the Levites who have charge of the tabernacle of the Lord. Then Moses and Eleazar the priest did as the Lord had commanded Moses. The booty remaining from the spoil that the troops had taken totaled 675,000 sheep, 72,000 oxen, 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 persons in all, women who had not known a man by sleeping with him. The half share, the portion of those who had gone out to war, was in number 337,500 sheep and goats, and the Lord's tribute of sheep and goats was 675. The oxen were 36,000, of which the Lord's tribute was 72. The donkeys were 30,500, of which the Lord's tribute was 61. The persons were 16,000, of which the Lord's tribute was 32 persons. Moses gave the tribute, the offering for the Lord, to Eleazar the priest, as the Lord had commanded Moses. As for the Israelites' half, which Moses separated from that of the troops, the congregation's half was 337,500 sheep and goats, 36,000 oxen, 30,500 donkeys, and 16,000 persons. From the Israelites half Moses took one of every 50, both of persons and of animals, and gave them to the Levites who had charge of the tabernacle of the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then the officers who were over the thousands of the army, the commanders of thousands and the commanders of hundreds, approached Moses and said to Moses, "Your servants have counted the warriors who are under our command, and not one of us is missing. And we have brought the Lord's offering, what each of us found, articles of gold, armlets and bracelets, signet rings, earrings and pendants, to make atonement for ourselves before the Lord." Moses and Eleazar the priest received the gold from them, all in the form of crafted articles. And all the gold of the offering that they offered to the Lord, from the commanders of thousands and the commanders of hundreds, was 16,750 shekels. The troops had all taken plunder for themselves. So Moses and Eleazar the priest received the gold from the commanders of thousands and of hundreds, and brought it into the tent of meeting as a memorial for the Israelites before the Lord. Numbers 32 verses 1 to 42. Conquest and division of Transjordan. Now the Reubenites and the Gadites owned a very great number of cattle. When they saw that the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead was a good place for cattle, the Gadites and the Reubenites came and spoke to Moses, to Eleazar the priest, and to the leaders of the congregation, saying, "Adaroth, Dibon, Jazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Elili, Sebam, Nebo, and Beon, the land that the Lord subdued before the congregation of Israel, is a land for cattle, and your servants have cattle." They continued, "If we have found favor in your sight, let this land be given to your servants for a possession. Do not make us cross the Jordan." But Moses said to the Gadites and to the Reubenites, "Shall your brothers go to war while you sit here? Why will you discourage the hearts of the Israelites from going over into the land that the Lord has given them? Your fathers did this, when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. When they went up to the Wadi Eshcol and saw the land, they discouraged the hearts of the Israelites from going into the land that the Lord had given them. The Lord's anger was kindled on that day, and he swore, saying, 'Surely none of the people who came up out of Egypt, from 20 years old and upward, shall see the land that I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, because they have not unreservedly followed me, none except Caleb son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite and Joshua son of Nun, for they have unreservedly followed the Lord.' And the Lord's anger was kindled against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness for 40 years, until all the generation that had done evil in the sight of the Lord had disappeared. And now you, a brood of sinners, have risen in place of your fathers, to increase the Lord's fierce anger against Israel. If you turn away from following him, he will again abandon them in the wilderness, and you will destroy all this people." Then they came up to him and said, "We will build sheepfolds here for our flocks and towns for our little ones, but we will take up arms as a vanguard before the Israelites, until we have brought them to their place. Meanwhile our little ones will stay in the fortified towns because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return to our homes until all the Israelites have obtained their inheritance. We will not inherit with them on the other side of the Jordan and beyond, because our inheritance has come to us on this side of the Jordan to the east." So Moses said to them, "If you do this, if you take up arms to go before the Lord for the war, and all those of you who bear arms cross the Jordan before the Lord, until he has driven out his enemies from before him and the land is subdued before the Lord, then after that you may return and be free of obligation to the Lord and to Israel, and this land shall be your possession before the Lord. But if you do not do this, you have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Build towns for your little ones and folds for your flocks, but do what you have promised." Then the Gadites and the Reubenites said to Moses, "Your servants will do as my Lord commands. Our little ones, our wives, our flocks, and all our livestock shall remain there in the towns of Gilead, but your servants will cross over, everyone armed for war, to do battle for the Lord, just as my Lord orders." So Moses gave command concerning them to Eleazar the priest, to Joshua son of Nun, and to the heads of the ancestral houses of the Israelite tribes. And Moses said to them, "If the Gadites and the Reubenites, everyone armed for battle before the Lord, will cross over the Jordan with you and the land shall be subdued before you, then you shall give them the land of Gilead for a possession, But if they will not cross over with you armed, they shall have possessions among you in the land of Canaan. The Gadites and the Reubenites answered, As the Lord has spoken to your servants, so we will do. We will cross over armed before the Lord into the land of Canaan, but the possession of our inheritance shall remain with us on this side of the Jordan. Moses gave to them, to the Gadites and to the Reubenites and to the half-tribe of Manasseh son of Joseph, the kingdom of King Sihon of the Amorites and the kingdom of King Og of Bashan, the land and its towns, with the territories of the surrounding towns. And the Gadites rebuilt Dibon, Ataroth, Aroer, Atroth-Shaphan, Jazer, Jogbehah, Beth-Nimrah, and Beth-Haran, fortified cities, and folds for sheep. And the Reubenites rebuilt Heshbon, Eleli, Kiriathaim, Nebo, and Balmeon, some names being changed, and Sibmah, and they gave names to the towns that they rebuilt. The descendants of Machir son of Manasseh went to Gilead, captured it, and dispossessed the Amorites who were there. So Moses gave Gilead to Machir son of Manasseh, and he settled there. Jair son of Manasseh went and captured their villages, and renamed them Havoth-Jair. And Nobah went and captured Kenath and its villages, and renamed it Nobah after himself. Numbers 33 verses 1 to 56. The stages of Israel's journey from Egypt. These are the stages by which the Israelites went out of the land of Egypt in military formation under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. Moses wrote down their starting points, stage by command of the Lord, and these are their stages according to their starting places. They set out from Ramesses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. On the day after the Passover, the Israelites went out boldly in the sight of all the Egyptians, while the Egyptians were burying all their firstborn, whom the Lord had struck down among them. The Lord executed judgments even against their gods. So the Israelites set out from Ramesses, and camped at Sukkos. They set out from Sukkos, and camped at Etham, which is on the edge of the wilderness. They set out from Etham, and turned back to Pi-Hahiroth, which faces Baal-zephon, and they camped before Migdol. They set out from Pi-Hahiroth, passed through the sea into the wilderness, went a 3 days' journey in the wilderness of Etham, and camped at Marah. They set out from Marah and came to Elim. At Elim there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped there. They set out from Elim and camped by the Red Sea. They set out from the Red Sea and camped in the wilderness of Sin. They set out from the wilderness of Sin and camped at Dophkah. They set out from Dophkah and camped at Alush. They set out from Alush and camped at Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. They set out from Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. They set out from the wilderness of Sinai and camped at Kibroth-Hattaavah. They set out from Kibroth-Hattaavah and camped at Hazeroth. They set out from Hazeroth and camped at Rithmah. They set out from Rithmah and camped at Rimmon-Perez. They set out from Rimmon-Perez and camped at Libnah. They set out from Libnah and camped at Rissah. They set out from Rissah and camped at Kehelatha. They set out from Kehelatha and camped at Mount Shepher. They set out from Mount Shepher and camped at Harada. They set out from Harada and camped at Makaloth. They set out from Makaloth and camped at Tahath. They set out from Tahath and camped at Turah. They set out from Turah and camped at Mithkah. They set out from Mithkah and camped at Hashmanah. They set out from Hashmanah and camped at Mosroth. They set out from Mosroth and camped at Bene-Jaakan. They set out from Bene-Jaakan and camped at Hor-Haggidgad. They set out from Hor-Haggidgad and camped at Jotbathah. They set out from Jotbathah and camped at Abrona. They set out from Abrona and camped at Ezion-Geber. They set out from Ezion-Geber and camped in the wilderness of Zin, that is, Kadesh. They set out from Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor, on the edge of the land of Edom. Aaron the priest went up Mount Hor at the command of the Lord and died there in the 40th year after the Israelites had come out of the land of Egypt, on the first day of the 5th month. Aaron was 123 years old when he died on Mount Hor. The Canaanite, the king of Arad, who lived in the Negeb in the land of Canaan, heard of the coming of the Israelites. They set out from Mount Hor and camped at Zalmonah. They set out from Zalmonah and camped at Punon. They set out from Punon and camped at Oboth. They set out from Oboth and camped at Iabrim, in the territory of Moab. They set out from Iam and camped at Dibon-Gad. They set out from Dibon-Gad and camped at Almon-Diblathaim. They set out from Almon-Diblathaim and camped in the mountains of Abarim, before Nebo. They set out from the mountains of Abarim and camped in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. They camped by the Jordan from Beth-Jeshemoth as far as Abel-Shittim in the plains of Moab. Directions for the conquest of Canaan. In the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to the Israelites, and say to them, when you cross over the Jordan into the land of Canaan, you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, destroy all their figured stones, destroy all their cast images, and demolish all their high places. You shall take possession of the land and settle in it, for I have given you the land to possess. You shall apportion the land by lot according to your clans. To a large one you shall give a large inheritance, and to a small one you shall give a small inheritance. The inheritance shall belong to the person on whom the lot falls. According to your ancestral tribes you shall inherit. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then those whom you let remain shall be as barbs in your eyes and thorns in your sides. They shall trouble you in the land where you are settling. And I will do to you as I thought to do to them." Numbers 34 verses 1 to 29. The boundaries of the land. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Command the Israelites, and say to them, when you enter the land of Canaan, this is the land that shall fall to you for an inheritance, the land of Canaan, defined by its boundaries. Your south sector shall extend from the wilderness of Zin along the side of Edom. Your southern boundary shall begin from the end of the Dead Sea on the east. Your boundary shall turn south of the ascent of Akrabim, and cross to Zin, and its outer limit shall be south of Kadesh-barnea. Then it shall go on to Hazar-Adar, and cross to Asman. The boundary shall turn from Asman to the Wadi of Egypt, and its termination shall be at the sea. For the western boundary, you shall have the Great Sea and its coast. This shall be your western boundary. This shall be your northern boundary. From the Great Sea you shall mark out your line to Mount Hor. From Mount Hor you shall mark it out to Lebo-Hamath, and the outer limit of the boundary shall be at Zedad. Then the boundary shall extend to Ziphron, and its end shall be at Hazarin. This shall be your northern boundary. You shall mark out your eastern boundary from Hazarin to Shepham, and the boundary shall continue down from Shepham to Riblah on the east side of Ain. And the boundary shall go down, and reach the eastern slope of the Sea of Chinnereth, and the boundary shall go down to the Jordan, and its end shall be at the Dead Sea. This shall be your land with its boundaries all around. Moses commanded the Israelites, saying, "This is the land that you shall inherit by lot, which the Lord has commanded to give to the 9 tribes and to the half-tribe. For the tribe of the Reubenites by their ancestral houses and the tribe of the Gadites by their ancestral houses have taken their inheritance, and also the half-tribe of Manasseh. The 2 tribes and the half-tribe have taken their inheritance beyond the Jordan at Jericho eastward, toward the sunrise." Tribal leaders. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "These are the names of the men who shall apportion the land to you for inheritance. The priest Eleazar and Joshua son of Nun. You shall take 1 leader of every tribe to apportion the land for inheritance. These are the names of the men. Of the tribe of Judah, Caleb son of Jephunneh. Of the tribe of the Simonites, Shemuel son of Ammihud. Of the tribe of Benjamin, Elidad son of Chislon. Of the tribe of the Danites a leader, Buki son of Jogli. Of the Josephites, of the tribe of the Manassites a leader, Haniel son of Ephod, and of the tribe of the Ephraimites a leader, Kemuel son of Shifton. Of the tribe of the Zebulunites a leader, Elizaphon son of Parnik. Of the tribe of the Issacharites a leader, Paltiel son of Azan. And of the tribe of the Asherites a leader, Ahud son of Shalomi. Of the tribe of the Naphtalites a leader, Pedahel son of Ammihud. These were the ones whom the Lord commanded to apportion the inheritance for the Israelites in the land of Canaan. Numbers 35 verses 1 to 34. Cities for the Levites. In the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Command the Israelites to give, from the inheritance that they possess, towns for the Levites to live in. You shall also give to the Levites pasture lands surrounding the towns. The towns shall be theirs to live in, and their pasture lands shall be for their cattle, for their livestock, and for all their animals. The pasture lands of the towns, which you shall give to the Levites, shall reach from the wall of the town outward 1,000 cubits all around. You shall measure, outside the town, for the east side 2,000 cubits, for the south side 2,000 cubits, for the west side 2,000 cubits, and for the north side 2,000 cubits, with the town in the middle, This shall belong to them as pasture land for their towns. The towns that you give to the Levites shall include the 6 cities of refuge, where you shall permit a slayer to flee, and in addition to them you shall give 42 towns. The towns that you give to the Levites shall total 48, with their pasture lands. And as for the towns that you shall give from the possession of the Israelites, from the larger tribes you shall take many, and from the smaller tribes you shall take few. Each, in proportion to the inheritance that it obtains, shall give of its towns to the Levites. Cities of refuge. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the Israelites, and say to them, When you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall select cities to be cities of refuge for you, so that a slayer who kills a person without intent may flee there. The cities shall be for you a refuge from the avenger, so that the slayer may not die until there is a trial before the congregation. The cities that you designate shall be 6 cities of refuge for you. You shall designate 3 cities beyond the Jordan, and 3 cities in the land of Canaan, to be cities of refuge. These 6 cities shall serve as refuge for the Israelites, for the resident or transient alien among them, so that anyone who kills a person without intent may flee there. Concerning murder and blood revenge. But anyone who strikes another with an iron object, and death ensues, is a murderer. The murderer shall be put to death. Or anyone who strikes another with a stone in hand that could cause death, and death ensues, is a murderer. The murderer shall be put to death. Or anyone who strikes another with a weapon of wood in hand that could cause death, and death ensues, is a murderer. The murderer shall be put to death. The avenger of blood is the one who shall put the murderer to death. When they meet, the avenger of blood shall execute the sentence. Likewise, if someone pushes another from hatred or hurls something at another, lying in wait, and death ensues, or in enmity strikes another with the hand, and death ensues, then the one who struck the blow shall be put to death. That person is a murderer. The avenger of blood shall put the murderer to death when they meet. But if someone pushes another suddenly without enmity, or hurls any object without lying in wait, or, while handling any stone that could cause death, unintentionally drops it on another and death ensues, though they were not enemies, and no harm was intended, then the congregation shall judge between the slayer and the avenger of blood, in accordance with these ordinances. And the congregation shall rescue the slayer from the avenger of blood. Then the congregation shall send the slayer back to the original city of refuge. The slayer shall live in it until the death of the high priest who was anointed with the holy oil. But if the slayer shall at any time go outside the bounds of the original city of refuge, and is found by the avenger of blood outside the bounds of the city of refuge, and is killed by the avenger, no blood guilt shall be incurred. For the slayer must remain in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest, but after the death of the high priest the slayer may return home. These things shall be a statute and ordinance for you throughout your generations wherever you live. If anyone kills another, the murderer shall be put to death on the evidence of witnesses, but no one shall be put to death on the testimony of a single witness. Moreover, you shall accept no ransom for the life of a murderer who is subject to the death penalty. A murderer must be put to death. Nor shall you accept ransom for one who has fled to a city of refuge, enabling the fugitive to return to live in the land before the death of the high priest. You shall not pollute the land in which you live, for blood pollutes the land, and no expiation can be made for the land, for the blood that is shed in it, except by the blood of the one who shed it. You shall not defile the land in which you live, in which I also dwell, for I the Lord dwell among the Israelites. Numbers 36 verses 1 to 13. Marriage of female heirs. The heads of the ancestral houses of the clans of the descendants of Gilead son of Machir son of Manasseh, of the Josephite clans, came forward and spoke in the presence of Moses and the leaders, the heads of the ancestral houses of the Israelites. They said, "The Lord commanded my Lord to give the land for inheritance by lot to the Israelites, and my Lord was commanded by the Lord to give the inheritance of our brother Zelophehad to his daughters. But if they are married into another Israelite tribe, then their inheritance will be taken from the inheritance of our ancestors and added to the inheritance of the tribe into which they marry, so it will be taken away from the allotted portion of our inheritance. And when the Jubilee of the Israelites comes, then their inheritance will be added to the inheritance of the tribe into which they have married, and their inheritance will be taken from the inheritance of our ancestral tribe." Then Moses commanded the Israelites according to the word of the Lord, saying, "The descendants of the tribe of Joseph are right in what they are saying. This is what the Lord commands concerning the daughters of Zelophehad. Let them marry whom they think best, only it must be into a clan of their father's tribe that they are married, so that no inheritance of the Israelites shall be transferred from one tribe to another, for all Israelites shall retain the inheritance of their ancestral tribes. Every daughter who possesses an inheritance in any tribe of the Israelites shall marry one from the clan of her father's tribe, so that all Israelites may continue to possess their ancestral inheritance. No inheritance shall be transferred from one tribe to another, for each of the tribes of the Israelites shall retain its own inheritance." The daughters of Zelophehad did as the Lord had commanded Moses. Mahlah, Tirzah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Noah, the daughters of Zelophehad, married sons of their father's brothers. They were married into the clans of the descendants of Manasseh son of Joseph, and their inheritance remained in the tribe of their father's clan. These are the commandments and the ordinances that the Lord commanded through Moses to the Israelites in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho.